seconds. Okay, here we go. So, hi, hello. I'm Amit. I think we already worked in Japan together, kind of indirect work, but in 7 years, since almost 9 years, we are in connected. So, thanks for finding time to have the assignment on cross culture communication course, cross culture management course. So, I am here to have asking some couple of questions regarding cross culture. So this is one of kind of assignment which I need to submit to some institutions, which is Accelerate Jamshedpur. So so since I know you have been working in different countries, presently you are in Japan and you have been also working in Brazil, and you are working in different culture kind of companies like Indian companies in Japan. So Elio, can you tell me about something yourself, your work background, how your roles in, like, what kind of work you're doing?
Sure, Amit. First of all, the pleasure is all mine, and really glad to meet you after a long time.
Same here.
Yes, definitely. We know each other. I think more than almost 8 years. I think it's a long time. But in these middles, I have been working for Indian companies in Japan for more than 6 or 7 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I would say I'm international liaison. Yeah, that's the best terminology that will describe myself.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, let me introduce myself for the ones that don't know me. I'm the second generation from Japanese. I was born and raised in Brazil. And Brazil is like Canada. It's like a country that was built up thanks to the immigration from many countries. So I was raised in the south of Brazil, which is typically German area in Brazil. So
Mm-hmm.
most of my friends from childhood, they can speak a little bit of Italian or German.
Oh, that's great.
So so I am in Indian companies. That's one idea. I have never, when I met you, I have never thought that I would be working for Indian companies. Yeah. At the time, if you remember, I was working for the government. I was working for Japan International Cooperation
Yeah.
Center. And
Right.
I was mostly free, and I was scouting some diplomats or some entrepreneurs to do some business between Japan and Brazil. And
Mm-hmm.
there was some big projects that I had the pleasure to be the coordinator, a project coordinator. And now,
Right.
currently, after 6 or 7 years, I got to be the IT, the program manager of Japan in Wipro Technologies. So it's I
That's
would
great.
never thought that. It's it is. I think that starts thanks to you. When I met you, you started talking about India culture.
India
Thank you
culture,
very
right?
much.
Okay. So I'm glad, like, because of my thought somewhere, you just started working in Indian companies. So yeah, I think that's great. Like, which kind of work? So you are working, as you mentioned, you are working with Indian company Wipro, right? And can you just describe some culture? Because I know, I kind of remember you have been working in Brazil as well. So can you just give me some difference kind of things, like working in Brazil versus working in Japan with Indian companies, or maybe I know Indian companies have significant culture difference if they are in Japan or versus India. So I would like to know from you, Elio.
Well, I am very suspect to answer your question because as my father was, I'm second generation from Japanese. In Brazil, I thought I was Japanese, but after I came here to Japan on my 20s, I realized that I was treated as a foreigner in Japan. So it's very
Oh,
identity crisis for me.
uh-huh.
Yeah. But yes, I can tell about Brazil and I can tell something about the Indian and Japanese difference cultures. Let me start from Brazil. Well, Brazil is a country, country in development like India. We have
Mm-hmm.
many similarities in between Brazil and India. And the region that I was raised is a purely a kind of European descendants region. And I in Brazil a long time ago it was there's many differences between the rich and the poor. So which means people needs to start their career very early. I started my career as a programmer when I was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in Japan, you would never find such a case like that. It's people usually they have a free education, completely free education for the elementary school and
Mm-hmm.
let's say junior high school. After that, they'd go to the secondary, which is like on their 17s,
Okay.
and then after that they will decide at 18 whether they will go to work or they're going to college or university. So in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil we are allowed to work since 15, I would say. I was working as a programmer when I was 15 years old because I learned very basic COBOL and basic language when I
Mm-hmm.
was 12, 13.
Oh,
So
great.
so the difference between Brazil and Japan at that time, now in Japan there was the seniority system, which means the elder you are, the highest higher salary you receive. But
Right.
in Brazil, it's not considered because although I was, let's say, 17 years old, I was promoted and got to be the leader of the IT center in Brazil before I came to Japan.
Okay. I think this is same in India. Like it doesn't matter the age. It matters of the expertise and this kind of knowledge you have.
I I like India because one thing I think that every time I go to interviews, people ask me what I want to do because I realized that for Indian people, or at least the interviews that I met, the most important thing is what you want to do.
Okay.
And this is very important. In Brazil, there would be some process, more strict process,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't matter what you want to do, but what the company need. And in Japan it's more strict yet. You would never have the chance of an interview before your documents are selected. There's a huge barrier in Japan to get
Oh,
into big companies.
okay. This good to know that actually. I didn't know about this. So,
Yes.
did you have any significant experience during your work in like Brazil since you are in presently working in Japan? So, if you have any significant experience, can you just share that?
Yes, very meaningful experience was when I was working for the government for one non-governmental organization. There's non-profitable organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I could go to
NGOs.
Brazil, and after, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, after living a long time in Japan, we get used to the latest technology, to the luxurious life in a kind, But I came from Brazil, and if I was forgetting some places of my country, and we were we were visiting the main forests of Brazil for some agri-forestry projects, and sometimes I could see some children, they have no schools in the village. So it was a shock for me because I was forgetting that the reality of Brazil, some
Oh,
places in Brazil.
okay.
And it was shocking because in Japan, by law, every children must have the education, at least the elementary education. It's for free.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, that's great. So, in Brazil, this elementary education is free, or in Japan you're talking?
Although in Japan is free. Of
Oh,
course,
yeah, I know.
in Brazil also is free, but it's different because the text is not free. But in Japan, all the material you can have from the government.
Right, right. I think that's true. So, like on those experiences when you are there, like, did you feel anything like your own kind of development, you are feeling much more comfortable. Like if you talk about the comfortability, do you feel like that Brazil were much more comfortable? Because since you were there, you born up there, right? And you are staying in Japan right now. How you explain that difference since you moved from Brazil to Japan?
Yeah, as I told you, I'm really suspected to answer to your question because I know the difference since I was born.
Uh-huh.
Because it was I was born from international marriage. But yes, there are many good points in both countries. Like uh, in Brazil, you're not in Japan, you're more formal for business. And even inside Japan, if you go to Kansai, Kyoto, people from Kyoto and Tokyo are pretty different. And in Brazil, it was more different the way to do business because that's not formal. You don't use. It's a very hot country. You don't use neckties. You don't need
Mm-hmm.
these black suits. The main difference would be that you get a personal first of all, you get a personal relation with the person who you want to do business with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you go for dinners, you talk about your families, you talk about your
Yeah.
hobbies. Then you will only start about closing contracts or the business topics when the coffee comes on the table
Mm-hmm.
in Brazil. Let's say we go for a dinner and we talk about our families, you talk about your hobbies, you talk about soccer or cricket, whatever. And then only after the lunch or the dinner, the coffee is free, the coffee comes, it's like espresso, and then
Oh.
your eyes change, you start the business mode.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very comfortable because you start to see the person as a human being before
Uh-huh.
everything. You are not looking the person as the company representative. In
Okay.
Japan, by all means, you are a company representative. You need, no matter what you like, no matter your personal things, you need to represent professionally your company in all these
Okay.
protocols.
That's really interesting because
Yeah.
yeah, I think like I totally agree with you because I've also been in working in Japan and I can see the so if you are representing yourself in the business meeting, the company names first. Like I'm a Chiyoda kind. For example, I was working in the Chiyoda Corporation. I think I can see some kind of similarities between Brazil and India because in India also the trust, the friendliness works first. Like they try to do business if you are comfortable with the much more friendly environment rather than professional environment. So they like to work in the friendly professional environment. It is not like the professional environment. So I totally agree. I think this is something great to know about this about the Brazil like how you guys have been working there. So my next question to that is linked with this question, like were you like more satisfied with working in it's totally you like totally up to you. Do you feel like you were more satisfied working in Brazil versus working in Japan you are right now? Like, can you just explain in detail like about your satisfaction level?
Well, when I was working in Brazil, let's say that was when I was a teenager. I was the programmer, COBOL programmer, and the Unix. I was doing some scripts in Unix. I was the IT guy of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot tell because I was not completely a completely adult in
Right.
that phase. You know,
Okay.
I only got my political professional experience here in Japan. I would say that I'm a specialist in Japan, by all means. Whatever
Right.
company I can work, I worked with many people from all over the world, with French people, with German people, American people. And as I have been working for multinational companies, I will always doing meetings between 4 or 5 countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really specialist in Japan. I'm really comfortable working from Japan.
Okay, great. I think yeah, I also agree with you because I can see when I was working in Japan, I think the story is same. Like when I was in Japan, I was kind of
Okay.
young, no married, just after graduation, I entered to Japan, and I started working there for 2 years, and then I returned back. I can see the comfortability. If we talk about the comfort zone, it is totally up to the kind of situation which we have. Like right now, I'm with my family. I have a daughter, my wife, so I can see. And this the company which I'm working is very great, like American company, and I can see the culture background here is a very awesome too. Work life balance is very good. I can find a lot
Hmm.
of time. So again, it depends upon the priorities. Like when we grow up to the career, the priorities also changed. In the initial level of the career, you must have the priority of the grow in your career, like a lot of learning,
Hmm.
lot of learning. The learning curves is very great. But in certain after certain years, you must feel like, okay, I should enjoy in my life, I should give time to my wife, family. The family time should be there. So in that sense, I can say I'm also in the unfortunate enough to work in this great company, and in this zone I can see I'm comfortable in working in India rather than working in Japan. Same story like you, since you are having the family here, you have a kids, and you can find some times. But definitely, I know you're working in Indian companies against. So that's a better difference, right? Kind of work culture you have. So my next question is, like, what do you think? So you're much more comfortable, or the work environment in Japan is better, the organization function or something. Do you think it is because of the country culture or organization culture? Why do you think you are much more comfortable working in Japan?
Well, that's all about history. Like Brazil is a very young country, like 500 years. Let's say just started to be developed in last 100 years, and almost all, like even US, they started to they have a small history. So the values are very different. We have a history from immigrants. It's very there's a diversity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, also, I am aware that in India there are lots of diversity. It's very difficult for you to create standards in a very diversified culture.
Right.
So in Japan, I can learn from my father, my family, that about Japanese culture since I was a small kid, and I
Mm-hmm.
could confirm when I came to Japan that Japan is a country of standards. There are many standards for many things. We have one thing called joshiki. Joshiki is the common sense.
Okay.
So if you ask the same questions to 10 people will have the same answer,
Oh,
mostly.
great. Is it? Oh, wow.
Yes, because they have a very uniform education. They
Mm-hmm.
have, let's say, one child in the school, they are more focused on learn not how to be the number one in the class, not
Oh,
how to take 100% in the test. In the elementary school, the children are they will not repeat the year if they are have low grades, because there are no grades for elementary school. They
oh my
don't
God.
have they don't have tests. They will not repeat the year if they are bad.
Oh my God. Is it?
So yes,
That's amazing. I didn't know about that. Yeah, please
yeah.
continue.
So what the elementary students will learn in the school, they will learn moral and
Mm-hmm.
civics. They learn how to survive and share the same values in society. For example, in Brazil, there are many people that they could not go to the school, so they have no other choice but to work in cleaning and to work like serving the coffee or tea and
Right.
serving the people who had some scholarity. But
Mm-hmm.
coming to Japan is completely different. In Brazil, if you go to the kitchen and do the coffee by yourself, or if you clean, of course we clean our desks, but if you clean the floor of the department, it would be like you're taking the job of someone who had no much opportunities in life, but they have only
Oh,
the cleaning. So in Japan it's different. You learn to do the cleaning, you clean the bathroom of the school All the
Mhm.
students, they take turns, they clean everything every day. After studying, you take your broom and you go to the baths, you clean the baths, you clean everything.
Oh my
Even
God.
for even for the meals, they serve by themselves. They put some masks and put some hats as the cook, and they learn nutritionism since they are in a very early age.
Right. So I think that's great. Can you just focus on, like, if you talk about the same question in the terms of organizations functioned, like if you talk about the working in Japan, how organization culture is different. Like I know this country has a lot of the education system is great. The people with common sense they talked about, but I want to focus on like the organization's perspective. How, because you have been working in Japan since long, and I can see you have been working in different kind of organizations as well, like Indian, Americans, Japanese. Can you just put on some lights on that side? Diff.
Sure. Well, I worked since the manufacturing until the this supporting some politics in the like JAXA, this NASA in the satellites projects between countries like Brazil, China, and Japan. I could see similar things in the different levels. Uh, in in a nutshell, Japan was grow up thanks to these moral values they have. That's not. It didn't start because someone throw a bomb in the country. Actually, it starts before that. Before that, there are many. What's that? I would say discipline before this the war, and it remains in the Japanese society. What I can say is that Japan is extremely the economy of Japan. They don't have much natural resource. Like in Brazil, you can have no money, but you can eat because Brazil has lots of natural resources, lots of agriculture. People do some exchanges. They give what they have in abundance. Like if you have more rice, you give to your neighbor, etc., etc. But in Japan, it's not like that. It's people are concentrated. I focused in many in the city places like Tokyo, Osaka, and the main difference is that Japan is dependent on the manufacturing strictly.
Right.
Used to be dependent on manufacturing, but now it's changing. So as Japan used to be dependent on manufacturing, they were not worried about having one like super education to be at the top of a company, etc. They need good professionals to work in the manufacturing itself. Like I was telling you that in Brazil, the one that serves the coffee to you or do the cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
they had no much education, but and then of course they received a low salary. In Japan, they are professionals in cleaning, let's say,
Yeah.
and they it doesn't mean that they receive a low salary. They receive almost the same salaries, like a flat based
Oh my God.
salary.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. That's great.
it doesn't mean that they don't have. Sometimes they have a good education, but they decided to follow the career of a cleaning or a cleaner or a
Mm-hmm.
cooker or someone that do coffee for that. So what's the difference now in the today in the Japanese culture is now uh, changing from manufacturing is more going on the technology, creating robotics, AI and so on. Of course, there's a good. I can see a bright future with India-Japan relations
Mm-hmm.
because of that. Because Japan has no much children, no much young people, and India is the country of many young people. And when you have children, you have future in your country. Uh, there's a small part of Japan that is really high, has a high education.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can see from people that come from India, people are really focused on give the best education for their children,
Yeah.
like to create some genius since they are 4 years old. So Japanese people are not worried about that. It's a very natural process, and I think that's one big difference between, because India and Brazil are really similar countries.
Yeah, true. I
Yeah,
think that's true.
this
Okay.
focus on
And
creating some genius instead of professionals. Yeah.
actually, I like to ask last question since we have already spent around 30 minutes. So I wanted to check one more thing. Like, so since you are working in Japan and you're working in Indian company, do you think the culture you are working is like is the best culture as compared with Japanese culture, or what is the difference if you, since you are working with Indian company in Japan and your background is from Brazil and Japan mix? What do you think? Like, what is the culture? How the environment is? How the people are? How they are taking care of the work? See, like work life balance. Can you just explain on that side?
Sure, it's very difficult to say one thing about one people,
Mm-hmm.
like Brazilian or Indian, or there are many stereotypes, uh, and I would say I believe in experiences. But yes, there's something that we can tell. Even inside Japan, people from Tokyo and Kyoto are different. In Kyoto, you would never approach as to be a friend in a friendly mode. You would be rejected. You need to be very professional and maintain certain distance to the person. In Kyoto, especially in Kyoto, is the very traditional way. You need to be. Uh, it's very hard to create a friend, but once you make a friend with someone, you're sure that this friend will do everything for you. In Tokyo, it's much open because it's a very globalized way. You can be more friendly since the beginning. So I appreciate all cultures I met so far. I met not only Indian people, not only Brazilian people, but I met many people from Italy and Germany, especially here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for I would say that uh, in my work now, in my current work, let's say I work for IT companies. I have been working for TCS for some years, and then I worked for another Indian American company, and now in Wipro. So I cannot tell about whole India, but what I can see is that Japanese culture is very minutiously high detailed um, culture. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to know and measure all details, and after you're certain that it will be a success, then you start. But in the Indian culture, or even sometimes in Brazilian culture, uh, we go for the high level. High level thing. Okay, it's enough to start. Then we can fix along the time. So
Right.
that's a huge gap between these countries, and I'm happy that I'm the one who is the liaison, who balances things. So I think that India, Brazil, and Japan are a good balance when working together.
I think that's great. Okay, all right, Elio, thank you so much for your time. I think I really appreciate the kind of response and the kind of experience you have shared. It is so much to learn, so much thing I can visualize while you're experiencing, sharing the experience of Brazil, or and like I can visualize something like in India we have. And again, in terms of the culture, there is again you've been experiencing since you can speak. I assume you can speak more than 5 languages, right?
Yes, yes, that's true.
Yeah, so that is great. I think it's one of the achievement you have, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
But I,
I'll
I, I really want to learn Hindi as well, or another language. I can
definitely.
do some greetings in many, like Telugu, Malayalam,
Oh
or
my God.
something. Yeah.
Even I'm staying in Hyderabad and I don't know Telugu. So I think that I
Oh,
really
okay.
appreciate. I'm learning Japanese at all, but
Uh-huh.
not that much time. Now I'm focused like very much to learn in Japanese.
Okay.
Definitely I'll
Yeah.
learn and I'll again come to meet you in Japan.
That's the secret of success. I think, like when I work with someone from Andhra Pradesh, I learned like Ye love naru, which means like aap kaise hai?
Oh
Is
wow,
something
that's
like
great.
yes, how are you? All genki desu ka?
That's
And
great.
then you get together with this person. I used to be a technical a long time ago. I'm not in technical anymore. I'm the management, right? And
Uh-huh.
we're when you're hiring people, we never get the perfect candidate. You get someone close to
Yes.
the profile you need. And in Japan, that's one word I would like you to learn is ninin sankyaku. Ninin sankyaku, which
Nini
means
Sankekyo.
two people makes one,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Sometimes what happens in Japan, sometimes you don't have a technical, but he is good in communication,
Okay,
or he
okay,
can
okay, got
speak
it.
2 or 3 languages. And some other times we have a communicator, but he's not technical. So we put these two guys together and we make two in one, and they
That's
will learn together and they will learn each other. This is something very important in Japan now.
that's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing. So I'm gonna disconnect this recording right now, and thank you so much, Elio. I think it's really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine, Amit. Thank you. Talk to you.